Hello and welcome to The Huddle. I'm Stephanie, and today I'm here with Ilya Brovin, who is the Chief Growth Officer at Sumsub. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Today we're going to talk about a new launch Sumsub has had, but can you just tell us a little bit about the company, where you operate, and how your verification services are used in online gaming?
Sure. So Sumsub is one of the leading identity verification providers. We've been around for about 8 years now. We work globally. We serve about 2,000 clients across many verticals, and gaming is one of the key verticals that we work with. We are different from some of the other providers because we provide a full cycle verification service. So all the way from onboarding and to ongoing monitoring and transaction monitoring and anti-fraud and reporting.
So tell us a little bit about the differences between a full cycle verification process and some of the others on the market in gaming right now.
Sure. So typically companies provide what's called point solutions. They help companies solve a particular pain point, maybe at onboarding or at ongoing monitoring or for different purposes as well, which usually means that companies themselves have to then integrate multiple providers across these different stages. But more than that, it's not just cost and work, also the difficulty of connecting the data internally to get a whole picture of the user is quite difficult. So because fraud is very advanced these days, it's actually much harder now to catch fraudsters just by looking at their behavior at onboarding or just looking at the transactions. You actually need to piece it together into what we call a 360 view of that user. And that's why we believe that connecting all of these into one single platform and a holistic view makes a lot of a difference, because then we can put together the information, the signals we have about the person from onboarding, how they transact later on. And by seeing that full picture, and actually not just within one client, but actually seeing networks of fraudsters across multiple clients and not necessarily in this industry, we can be much more effective at finding fraud.
It does sound like a complicated process. How long did it take you to develop, and did you work with gaming operators when developing the full cycle verification?
Absolutely. I'd say like some of the pieces that make up part of the solution have been around for a long time and have involved us, fine-tuning our solution for many years. On the identity verification part, obviously, which has been our main product for a long time. We've onboarded over 200 million individuals throughout the life, so we do have a lot of experience. We have been developing our transaction monitoring solution for quite a long time, and having developed it, that's what actually allowed us to make this holistic offering specifically for the gaming industry, which has some of the particular patterns, I would say, besides just regulatory compliance with the likes of AML regulations and KYC rules. You also have the responsible gambling as a responsibility of operators, so they need to actually look at the activity of the user, not only from a fraud perspective, but also from making sure that they're not, as I say, gambling their pension away. And so you do need to, so we have indeed invested a lot into this, and we have collected a lot of the feedback from our partners and clients to be able to develop that.
So other than the responsible gaming features, what are some of the other things that are necessary for verification within the gaming industry that are not for sectors like fintech, for example?
Sure. Well, there are multiple features, a couple that I can speak about. So one is, for example, age verification. In actual fintechs, you need to know and verify the identity and the date of birth of the individual. In gaming, it's not always necessary, but you still need to know that users are accessing age-appropriate content, and therefore you want to verify their identity without creating unnecessary friction. So that's one of the AI-based features that we have trained on all of the individuals we onboarded historically. There's another feature that's connected to kind of dynamic risk profiling of users. Again, the nature of gaming interaction is very dynamic. And you want to be able to kind of have a constantly updating risk profile of the user based on all of their activity, not just based on the onboarding. So that's another feature that is used in the gaming industry.
You've mentioned the KYC checks earlier,
Yeah.
and in your launch, you've said that the Know Your Customer checks have been refined down to less than 30 seconds, correct?
Indeed, and that is very much regional specific. Obviously, the default method of verification globally would be based on the documents, and I compare documents to cash. Everybody can accept cash, but it's actually quite, inconvenient to deal with for both sides, both for the user and for the recipient of that. And so you can compare lots of non-document based checks to electronic payments. So, i.e., when you can very conveniently and quickly and securely do the transaction you want to effect without actually extra friction. So what this means is that we're integrated, tens and tens of various non-document verification methods locally, but we provide it in one global platform. So when working with customers that want to onboard individuals from multiple geographies, they don't actually need to individually integrate separate methods. But the typical or illustrative flow could be, say we have an individual coming from a particular jurisdiction, there might be some local method that they're very familiar with, they have an account with, there's some way to authenticate themselves. In some of these cases, verification can take just mere seconds while being compliant locally.
Speaking of individuals in certain jurisdictions or locality, how do you detect when people might be using a VPN, a virtual private network, to access content that might not be compliant where they are?
Look, there are two angles to it. How do we detect it technically? It's possible to do. The servers do see whether users are using that or not, and obviously that's part of our broader behavioral risk scoring. But ultimately, it's the clients of ours that decide how they want to treat those. They can either assign a particular additional risk score to the overall metric based on the fact that the person might be using a VPN or not, or they might reject it outright because use of VPN is not always a definite binary signal of fraud, but it can be one of the parts to the overall decision.
Sure. And so how would an operator integrate the Sumsub verification solution into their platform?
Yeah, look, it's actually we believe it's a very simple integration. In reality, of course, it depends quite a bit on the complexity of the business of the client and the complexity of the use cases and how advanced they are in terms of setting up those risk profiles and how much of the functionality they want to take. So they would need to integrate our APIs related to onboarding and to transaction monitoring, and then they use our dashboards and our no-code, very simple solutions to actually set up those rules, set up the onboarding flows and the monitoring rules. So we obviously have solution architects and customer success personnel to help them, and that will depend, quite largely on the scale of the customer. Whether you're a smaller company or a big operator, you will find the necessary level of support from us.
Speaking of support, and we have touched on this already, but the responsible gaming tools, are they something that the player will see that Sumsub has offered or been part of creating, or is this purely for the operators on the back end?
It's for the operators on the back end. They are the ones that are that have the responsibility to monitor and make sure that whoever is using that platform is doing so responsibly.
And though this has been a big launch and we'll see you through to the end of the year probably, since it's middle of Q4 now, we just wanted to ask as well, what are Sumsub's plans for next year and going into 2024?
Look, 2023 has been a very active year for us on many directions, from product point of view, regionalization point of view. We've launched an office in Singapore, in APAC, and we've launched a local presence in many countries. We will continue that trend. We believe in our view of a single full cycle verification platform. So we will continue to sell that, and we believe that next year will actually be a very active, maybe even a breakthrough year for some of our new solutions, like transaction monitoring, like the package for the gaming industry, and we also have several products coming for some of the industries, like crypto specifically, as it's going through a large regulation phase. I would say, as an industry broadly, we're there to help our clients as well.
And would that be sort of at the intersection then, crypto and gaming, that you would help
If
and provide
there
solutions
are there
for?
are players that's at the intersection. In general, I think these are different client segments and different use cases. But yes, there are operators that cross over and that they will benefit from the solution as well.
Well, we'll see in the future, I guess. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
speaking with us today.
Thank you for your time.